Prior to its signing in New Zealand in February, the Trans-Pacific Trade Partnership was the subject of years of top-secret negotiations. Of course, it's hard to keep a big secret for long. In November of 2013, WikiLeaks released the draft of the entire chapter on intellectual property rights. The organization described it as perhaps the most controversial chapter of TPP due to its wide-ranging effects on medicines, publishers, internet services, civil liberties, and biological patents. Now, the TPP is a trade agreement among 12 Pacific Rim nations, including the US and Japan. Now, conspicuously absent, though, is China. That's because, in addition to serving as a complement to the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, or TTIP, a trade pact between the US and the EU, which is also shrouded in secrecy, the TPP provides a buffer against China's growing influence in the global economy. Now, China presents such a challenge to American hegemony around the world that Washington has been pulling out all of the soft power stops to stimulate it, including pushing forward these controversial trade pacts led by the most prominent corporations that will ultimately cover 60% of the global GDP. That according to WikiLeaks. Now, touted as a means to protect American workers and industry, the deal actually does the complete opposite. If anything, it's really a corporate coup of governments and industries. It usurps the legislative authority of Congress and world governments by writing its own rules concerning safety and labeling of foods, access to healthcare and medicines, regulation of banks, rights of workers, future energy sources, and so much more. So its scope is essentially everything across the board. And President Obama's fast-track authority means he doesn't even need to run it past our lawmakers before signing the US up on the largest and most controversial trade deal since NAFTA. Now, here to discuss this in further detail is Kevin Zeese, Director of Popular Resistance and Information Clearinghouse for resistance movements here in the US that he helps organize. He and his movement have flooded Congress with literally thousands of signed petitions to oppose TPP. And I began by asking him where TPP fits into Washington's so-called pivot to Asia. Take a look.
That's a great question. Most people don't start with that. That's a good place to start. The TPP is essentially the economic arm of the Asian pivot. In fact, all of these trade agreements that are negotiated by and for the corporations really are the economic arm of U.S. empire. We can see that in Asia, where we're pushing 52% of the Navy to surround China. At the same time, we're pushing the TPP, which attempts to cut China out as much as they can of the Asian economy. You can also see it in the European trade agreement that President Obama is negotiating with Europe at the same time that we're surrounding Russia with military bases through NATO. And so this is the modern American colonialism. We call it neo-colonialism. It's not the same as traditional colonialism. And that's why a lot of people don't recognize that the U.S. is an empire. But in fact, the U.S. is the largest empire in world history, with 1,100 military bases and military outposts around the country, and that number is growing rather than shrinking. We're seeing a lot of growth in Africa. We're seeing a lot of growth in the Middle East. And then the economy of the United States is an empire economy. An empire economy is designed to serve the interests like previous colonial eras of the corporations of the country that leads the empire. The corporations in this case are the transnational corporations that help to negotiate the TPP. The empire economy also sucks out a lot of resources. 55% of domestic discretionary spending goes to the military, and it serves the oligarchs of the nations that are part of the empire. So, the Japanese oligarchs will benefit, but the Japanese agricultural cooperatives will probably be destroyed. You'll see the same in Vietnam. You'll see the same in Australia, in New Zealand. The benefits will go to the oligarchs and to the transnational corporations. That's who these neo-colonial efforts are designed to support.
Kevin, you've raised some really interesting points here. How can the US and other countries use the TPP to expand soft power around the globe? And why does the US even need something like the TPP to do so?
Well, it's just another tool. I mean, they have a variety of tools. You could also add the IMF and the World Bank to their tool chest. You can also add USAID. I was just reading something this morning about Secretary of State Clinton said while she was in the Obama government. She talked about expanding USAID and making it into a really major development program, teaming up with private corporations, and private corporations interpret that as, oh, good, the U.S. government will pay half, so we can make even more money. And so, and USAID, of course, as you know, has a long history of covert operations, of so-called soft power, covert operations to undermine governments that we don't like. And so, the U.S. government will get the benefit of having Goldman Sachs and Monsanto and Halliburton join them in the USAID programs. And the corporations will get the benefit of having USAID tax dollars adding to their profits. And so it's we have really a situation where we have a corporate government. And it's not a corporate government of small businesses, which people often call the backbone of the United States. It's a corporate government of big business, especially transnational corporate business. And that's what this is really all designed to build and to strengthen. And it's going to hurt U.S. workers. It's going to hurt the environment in the United States, and it's going to hurt, smaller family-sized businesses.
And going off of what you just said, looking ahead, what precedent does the TPP negotiating process and this fast-track authority set?
Well, it builds on previous precedent, and it learns from mistakes of previous efforts. In the past, they weren't as secret in their negotiations. TPP was kept secret for as long as possible. They actually wanted to keep it secret longer. They wanted to keep it secret for 4 years after it was ratified, as bizarre as that sounds. The only reason we get to see it now is because of the fast-track fight, the fight to give Obama trade authority in a fast-track way where Congress is pretty much minimized to just approving or not approving without any hearings, no amendments, etc. And to get that through, President Obama had a hard time. It took him a couple of years' effort. And to get it through, they needed to compromise. And one of the compromises was letting us see the TPP for 90 days before it was signed. It was just signed, of course, yesterday. And that 90-day period ended. But that gave us the opportunity to actually see what was in the TPP. It wasn't just leaks. With leaks they can say, well, that's not accurate, I'm not going to comment, or that's out of context. But now we got to see all 6,000 pages. And by having that opportunity, it was much easier to organize people because we could tell them what's really in the TPP, what it really will do to food safety, to access to medicines, to regulating of Wall Street banks, to almost every aspect of our lives is impacted by this. And we could actually reach out to different constituencies and say, right here it says, this is what's going to do to your issue. And so people can join us and get more involved.
Well, it even raises the question, if that pivot is so public, why all the secrecy surrounding negotiations of this trade partnership?
Well, I think the secrecy, they really want to keep it secret as long as possible because the facts hurt. Knowing what's really in the TPP makes it much less popular. We're seeing our protest movement getting stronger since it was made public. Today there'll be almost 40, protests around the country, as well as in 7 nations. And so it's a movement that's getting stronger as time goes by. And it's making putting a lot of pressure on Washington, D.C. Less and less elected officials want to vote on this in an election year. And that's important because the way these trade agreements are defeated is by delay. And so now that it's public, the movement grows, gets it harder to pass, especially in election year, and we may be able to delay this until the next president, and then we'll have to fight again, most likely, unless we're extremely surprised and see Bernie Sanders get elected president. He's really the only really strong anti-TPP candidate. The others, Hillary Clinton has been mixed on this. She finally came around to saying she's opposed to it. We're not sure what that really means in the end. And they're also, most of the Republicans, top-tier Republicans, are also opposed to it, but we're not sure what that means to them either. They may mean it's not good enough for the corporations. I'm not sure. But so we expect that this movement's going to continue to build over to 2016, and it's going to continue to build into 2017. We'll have to have one more probably fight to finally kill it off, and we're doing that through our campaign, flushthetpp.org.
Well, thank you so much, Kevin, for joining us today.
Thanks a lot for having me on.